Namaskar. Welcome everyone. We have with us Ambassador Dr. Malay Mishra. So he'll be telling us about the Afghanistan crisis. Dr. Malay Mishra is a retired IFS officer, a former ambassador with postings in France, Senegal, Mauritius, USA, Iran, Germany, Seychelles, Trinidad and Tobago, and Hungary. He has widely represented India. He has a doctorate and has many interests and contributions. Ambassador Mishra, please share about the regional impact and diplomatic policy options for India.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anita Sabat. Thank you for inviting me to this recording of this evening. Well, the Afghanistan crisis is uppermost in all countries in the world today, and particularly for us in India, because we are a directly affected country for whatever the crisis is taking place there. So I think for our policymakers, it has been an extremely difficult situation now to find out the right policy, how to go about it. As you would know, that soon after the Taliban took over Kabul on the night of 14-15 August, just the day after, we started evacuating our mission. We wanted to ensure safety and security of our diplomatic and security staff. And so we did it in two batches on the two consecutive days on 16th and 17th. And we pulled out about 275 of our personnel. On the whole, we did about 500 plus Indians and Indian, various constituents, nationals, our nationals, and Afghan Sikhs and Hindus, and a few other nationals also. So our policy at the moment, as was spelled out by our External Affairs Minister a few days back at an all-party meeting, was we adopt the policy of wait and watch, and we see how the situation is evolving in Afghanistan, how far and how soon it is stabilizing. Of course, it is now common sense to imagine that the Taliban came with the huge support of Pakistan because they had been largely trained, funded, provided sanctuary, and pushed across the Durand Line into Afghanistan to form this highly militarized and highly intensive fighting group to take on the might of the Afghan National Army, trained this 300,000 strong army trained by the US over 20 years, and but at the last moment they all capitulated, as we know. Why they did it and how those can be studied and rectified, that is the subject of another discussion perhaps. But here we talk about the regional impact. I think here we are looking at 3-4 principal actors now, the new stakeholders, with the US having withdrawn or having declared its withdrawal, and by 31st August that they are withdrawing. We see a new actor in the field, that is China.
Yes.
And the role of China is going to be very important because China, in my view, is going to fill up the power vacuum which has been caused by the US withdrawal. And it has reason to do so because it has already entertained a Taliban delegation in the end of July, which was led by Mullah Baradar, the head of the political affairs office in Doha. They visited Tianjin on the 28th July, and there China had an agreement with the Taliban that they had a deal that they would come in and give the support to Taliban and give their funding and their international legitimacy also, provided the Taliban bring a modicum of stability to Afghanistan, in lieu of Afghanistan committing itself not to indulge in any kind of terrorist activities on the Uyghur front or in the Eastern Turkmenistan movement front, which causes China some amount of alarm. Uh, and also, China is interested in exploiting the huge amount of mineral resources of Afghanistan, and particularly the rare earth minerals. Afghanistan, as is known, is sitting over 1 trillion worth of rare earth minerals alone. Besides all kinds of resources at the command, zinc, copper, tin, gold, you name it, and they are there. So that is one big factor for China's push into this region.
Yes.
And last but not the least is their getting Afghanistan into the fold of the so-called Belt and Road Initiative, which is an extension of the CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, passing through Afghanistan to go into Central Asia,
Yes.
and thereon going to Europe. So Afghanistan is a big point of transit for the BRI. So obviously they would like the whosoever is ruling Afghanistan now to enlist the support. Russia has also come into the field because of its own interest in securing, the territorial integrities of the Central Asian republics, which were not long ago a part of the Soviet Republic. Now they are all independent sovereign countries, but they all border on Afghanistan. For example, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, they were all part of the great Soviet empire, but now they are all independent countries, but each have their own ethnic constituents within Afghanistan. So it's a very fraught moment for Russia to pull in and pull behind the weight, give the weight to Taliban, to extend their indirect support to Taliban. Iran, for obvious reasons, that the Islamic Republic of Iran is happy that the US has withdrawn, and is also happy that there is a radical Islamic group in power which will extend the Islamic territorialization of this area.
Yes.
Yet Iran also is worried that the Shia groups, the Hazara groups in Afghanistan could be the targets of Taliban attack.
Yes.
So this is the general regional impact. For our policy options, as I said, we could wait and watch, or there are divergent views in our foreign policy establishment. There is one view which says that yes, we wait and watch, we see how the situation evolves, because we don't know which is the entity which is now or going to be in power in Kabul. And after 31st withdrawal of US, things will be clearer, and then we will see how it evolves, how it stabilizes, and then we will see whether to recognize or not. The other view says that yes, we had in the beginning missed out dealing with the Taliban frontally, because India is a power in its own right, and India is the leader among the SAARC group of countries, of which Afghanistan is a member. India has invested $3 billion of investment in various areas in Afghanistan, and has got that goodwill and affection of the Afghan people for India. So all that could have been encashed by India when it talks to even the Taliban, group of people who were then negotiating with various other powers, mostly China and Russia and even Iran. They went to various places and they negotiated with them. So India missed out at that point. Later on, when India came along with some other countries to say that yes, we will only support that particular entity which comes not through force but through an inclusive governance mechanism. So now we are looking for an inclusive government to be formed, and basically what India would be interested in seeing is how this this talks between the Taliban group led by Mullah Baradar in Kabul and the other group led by former President Karzai and Abdullah, how they are coming to an end, how they are coming to a conclusion, whether there is power sharing between these two groups, and if there is, then what is the future of this kind of a coalition government? The other factor, which is a kind of a a dark horse, if you can say that at this moment, is the resistance movement.
Mm-hmm.
The resistance movement, which is growing from Panjshir Valley, led by Ahmad Masood, the son of the famous legendary Tajik fighter Ahmad Shah Masood, who was killed by the Al Qaeda forces just 2 days before 9/11 incident. Ahmad Masood has now picked up with the help of his own people. And remember that Panjshir is the only hideout which has not come under Taliban control yet. So they are still fighting a sort of a guerrilla movement from there and hoping that other countries will support them. Now it leads to the US, EU, and other Western countries where they are. India is in consultation with all of them. Our External Affairs Minister who is speaking to his counterpart in the US. Prime Minister Modi also spoke to his counterpart in Italy, and Italy is going to hold a kind of an emergency meeting of the G7 group of countries. So things are evolving constantly, and as I speak to you now, I hear reports of a second US drone attack on a vehicle in Kabul, in the heart of Kabul, which was supposed to be carrying explosives and a few ISIS-K fighters.
Okay.
So perhaps they were going towards the airport to have a second explosion there, bombing. And they have just caught that, and the drone attack has immobilized that vehicle, and then they have destroyed all the explosives and killed some ISIS people also. So this is the way I would look at the situation. It's an extremely, extremely fluid situation at the moment. India has got direct interest because all these jihadi groups, they could indirectly radicalize our young people in India belonging to our Muslim communities who would be radicalized perhaps at the influence of this. In fact, some of these groups have already sang praises to the Taliban. Taliban victory is a boost to Islamic victory, they say, and that makes our, for example, Jammu and Kashmir very vulnerable now to any kind of attack. And China, Pakistan, Russia, this kind of a formation is not good for India at this current point of time. And India is losing out on time. India has lost out on a locational advantage. So I think India will have to hold its courage and go very cautiously, carefully, and weigh all sides and look at it. At the same time, you would note that India is still the president of the UN Security Council for this month. Till the end of August, India is the president of the Security Council. So there also we can play some role in mobilizing other members who would like to take some view on the side of the United Nations towards Afghanistan. So that is how I would resume it, because I don't have much time to talk now. I can take some questions if you want to ask.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mishra. So we have a couple of questions. This question is by Tulip Suman. She asks, what do you think India should do right now to improve the relations with its neighbors?
You see, this Afghanistan issue has muddied India's relations with at least its northern neighbors. As regards neighbors like Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Maldives, we have good relations. We have excellent relations with all these countries. And we are, of course, we would like to keep a watch on whatever developments they're having domestically. But those developments may not have an immediate fallout on our internal security. So we could hold, in my view, kind of a SARC meeting, an emergency meeting perhaps. Of course, SARC, as you know, has been lying dormant for some time, basically because of Pakistan's non-cooperation. But Afghanistan being a member, and now there is no entity in charge of Afghanistan, even if calling a SARC meeting will not help us except meeting our people. So I think bilaterally we can meet, we can go out and meet in the various regional capitals and check how they feel about it. India is there to support them all the time. We are there. We are going to assist them. It is through India that we develop a large connectivity network, And there are very many projects now in South Asia which is going along. So we have an advantageous position in South Asia insofar as these neighbors are concerned. As regards Pakistan and Afghanistan, I just told what, in my view, we should do, and we should wait and see how the situation evolves. And in fact, I believe that the Taliban is still giving feelers, sending feelers to us to come back to Kabul. And when we left Kabul, it was Stanekzai, the head of their political affairs committee of the Taliban, who had assured safety and security to our personnel there, and he had in fact said, "Don't close down your mission." But we did it because we felt a threat perception. So we continue to be in this kind of a situation now, and this is my answer to her question.
Another question by Tulip Suman. Do you think these two camps, that is Camp 1 is Pakistan, Afghanistan, Russia, China, Turkey, Iran, and Camp 2, that is the Quad and NATO, are going to clash sometime? What are the chances of a full war in the immediate future?
Well, I discount the possibility of a full war in the future, mainly because there is some kind of a check and balance system in the subcontinent. We would not let that happen because India is between two powers which are both nuclear armed powers, and we are in somewhat of a disadvantageous situation. But as we are assured by our command head that we can fight a two-front war, but we don't want to. Nobody wants a war. Yes. A possibility of a collaboration between this axis, what you mentioned, this Pakistan, China, Russia, and NATO. I don't think much of that will come out because, of course, China and Russia are two veto-wielding members of the United Nations. They are two, permanent members.
Yes.
Anything which is done in the United Nations to recognize or de-recognize or sanctions even on the Taliban will have to get the support of all the 5 permanent members.
Yes.
And Russia and China being 2, and they are sure to veto these kind of measures, even block any kind of sanctions on their funds or on the, except that the funds which are in the US Treasury, they can be blocked. IMF and World Bank has already blocked, but I see a kind of a glimmer of light that in the future, if Taliban forms a all-inclusive coalition system, and develop some kind of a arrangement with the other group, or what I talked about, the Karzai group, then perhaps it can run. It can run. And then we can see if we could, because we are a democracy and we are linking ourselves to all the forward-looking democracies of the world, including US, including EU countries, and all of the countries. So I think we play a pivotal role in this thing. And as a leader in our own right in South Asia, as a heavily invested country in Afghanistan, we should have a say. We do have a say, and we should exercise it. That is my answer to that.
Absolutely. We have another question. This is by Shri Surya Parida. He asks, if Taliban is killing Basra, why is Iran supporting Taliban?
Well, as I said, Iran has its own interest in supporting Taliban because Iran is an Islamic republic, and Taliban is going to establish an Islamic Emirate there. So it is basically an extension of Islamization of this part of the Asian continent. They would support it. Secondly, they would support because they have got rid, the Taliban have got rid of the US, and that is an affront to US, policy, global policy of going around and controlling other countries and other powers, and Iran has been bitterly against it. In fact, the new president of Iran who has just come in, who has just taken office. He's extremely bitter. He's anti-US to the core, and now the so-called this negotiations, this nuclear negotiations, which President Biden has been keen to rejoin. That the Iranians are not keen unless situations are favorable for them. And if the Americans declare that they will not continue with so much of sanctioning and all that, and testing and all that stuff, and they will allow Iran to peacefully develop its nuclear energy, it will go. So there are many factors why.
Yes.
And you are right that the Taliban is against the Hazaras. They will go after the Hazaras, but there are thousands of Hazaras who have crossed the border into Iran, and Iran is now hosting more than 1 million Afghan refugees. I think next to Pakistan, Iran has been the maximum number of refugees it has hosted in its own soil. So I think Iran is a frontal power, and we have to look at Iran also, because we used to have good relations with Iran thanks to the sanctions which was imposed by former President Trump. We had to moderate our relationship with Iran, but that is again a catch, because we have certain interests in Iran also. For example, the Chabahar port, through which we want to develop connectivity through Afghanistan into India, and we are all these interests at play. So we need to develop all these through Tajikistan, another line coming in, a gas line coming in from Tajikistan, again to Afghanistan. So we have to guard all this. So I think that is how I would answer.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra, for sharing your insights. It was great to listen to you. And thanks to all the viewers for joining. Thank you so
very
much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sawant. I hope I didn't move very fast given your time.
No, it was very informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.